Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of an Aftershock Tremor. Today we're going to talk about the earthquakes against the Sounders coming up this Wednesday at PayPal Park. I have a special guest today from American Soccer Analysis, Harrison Crow. Harrison, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's really good to have you on because you and I have talked over the last few years quite a bit about the Sounders and soccer in the Cascadia region in general. But at the same time, one of the things that you've really been out there talking about is at the league level is the impact of Chris Wondolowski. And you and I both know that there are a lot of people who still do not like Wondo, but I've always found that you're someone who has really enjoyed what he's brought to the league. What did you think about his performance against RSL, and kind of where at this point do you feel like, Chris Wondolowski is in the echelon of strikers in the history of MLS?
On the echelon, that's hard to say. Like, I'll be honest, when it comes to historical, I love being able to try to neutralize all the strikers that have been and played. But it's so hard because you have all these different contexts and all this different criteria that you have to consider over the years. Suffice to say, Chris Wondolowski is one of the best goal scorers in history, period, for MLS. And it's funny because with RSL, he didn't do anything different than what he normally does. And Brian Dunseth covered that in the game. And I think that was, it's kind of funny. It was just sloppy defending by RSL. And someone so experienced as Wondolowski, like, his skill set doesn't diminish. He's still incredibly intelligent, one of the most intelligent players in this league, and that's how he scores his goals. I mean, you could see him going as soon as he came in. I think the 75th minute, he starts pushing that back line immediately. Like, I watched the game before we had our conversation, and like, you could see him pushing that back line, and he was standing offside. And it got to a point to where Justin Glad just kind of left it alone. Like, he's getting in my head. I'm just going to give him his space. And eventually he just caught a defender napping. And because he was able to slip behind that defender, he was able to score that goal. And that's nothing new. He's done this consistently. He's so skilled. And then on top of that, he does have a really good technical touch, right? He does have all those criteria that you expect from a goal scorer. It's not just his knowledge, it's his physical and athletic ability. He's in such great shape. Like, I wish I was in his shape so badly. Like, like people talk, oh, his skill, he's slowing down, he doesn't have the speed. My goodness, man, that guy is just like, the guy, he legitimately could play for another 10 years off the bench. And I think that's perfect for him, especially for Cade Cowell. And, Matt Doyle talked about if he can just impart just a little bit of that sly Wondo-ness, if you will, to what makes him Wondo onto Cade Cowell. He's going to be such a dynamic, amazing, fun player to watch for another 15 plus years.
So let's talk about the Sounders, a team that Wondo has scored quite often against over time, and I'm sure you love him a little bit less when that happens. But the Sounders, obviously, coming off another amazing season. Yesterday on the broadcast, basically, they mentioned that the Sounders have become the super team in MLS because consistently they find ways to get it done year after year. But nonetheless, there are some fairly big differences in terms of the way that the Sounders are kind of rolling out this year. They're rolling out a new formation. Jordan Morris, obviously with the injury that he sustained playing over in the UK, not going to be available for the team. How has that affected so far Brian Schmetzer's setup for this team this season?
Well, Jordan Morris is a great shout, right? But I don't think anybody expected him to come back. His letter to Seattle was basically, loved my time here, I'm moving on. And I think that was the expectation that the Seattle organization had. I think that's the impression that many Seattle fans had, was that this was going to be a year with Jordan Morris. So even though he doesn't, he's back and, he's rehabbing, I don't know that's changed anything. I think really what's changed is the fact that, we don't have Kevin Leardan. You don't have Jovan Jones. You don't have Gustav Svensson. So you're taking a huge core of what has made this team and the depth that has made this team over the last few years, and you're replacing it with a lot of youth, and you're injecting it with a lot of youth. And so with that, you also don't have many wingers left. And I think that was a little bit by design. They have a lot of trust in some of the players that they've developed. And so tactically, yes, this does look different. It's a 3-5-2. And you're using Nuhu there as a left center back, whereas beforehand he was the left back from starting left back for most of last year. And Brad Smith coming back after a year off in the UK, returning back. He's come back, and instead of being a left back, he's a left wing back, which kind of suits his talents a little bit more. He's a little bit weak defensively, and I don't think anyone really anticipated him starting this season. Jimmy Madronda, who they acquired from Nashville last season for Hinwala Bologna, was, I think, the target. And I'm a huge Jimmy Madronda fan. I love his talents. Great athletic player, great passer. But Brad Smith takes over because of Madronda's injury early in preseason. And he's, to his credit, he stumbled a little bit, but he's been terrific. He actually second in the team in shots. He's doing a lot of the ball progression for the Sounders out wide, and that's how the Sounders are moving this ball without Ladero. Ladero's been largely been out of the equation for the last few weeks. Obviously, against LA and against Portland, he's kind of been brought off the bench to. I'm sorry, he didn't play against Portland. Against LA, he came off the bench and he got some minutes. And he's nursing an injury himself. So what they've done is they've gone to their youth. As I said, they've brought in Josh Intisio, and he's helped spray some balls and been just kind of taken over that Gustav Svensson defensive stalwart position. He's been actually really good with the ball at his feet with the progression. But again, Seattle's really, how they've not only done this is they've provided a lot of width and then attacked down those wide channels. A couple years ago, the whole thing with Seattle was these overloads that they're doing on the wings. Now they're trying to isolate those wings a little bit more. So Brad Smith and then Alex Roldan, who's one of the big, I don't want to say like impact players, because that's a little disingenuous to what role he is. He's very underwhelming in terms of what it looks like he's doing, but he has the most successful balls played into the box this season for the Sounders. So they're really utilizing him. They're utilizing Brad Smith as those attacking prongs in that setup, and then using Will Bruin to work on the ball to set up Rui Diaz off the ball in that attack. So it does look different in terms of what they've done before, what you're expecting with Jordan Morris, with Ladero, but reality is they have a lot of the same players, and they're just functioning in the same spaces as they were before. They've just moved players around to make them successful in those same places. And that's what Brian Schmetzer has excelled in the last few years, is he just finds what they're good at doing, and he puts them in those roles. It's not completely dissimilar to how guys like Bruce Arena have been successful. There's maybe a little bit more tactical nuance with how the Seattle Sounders do that, with Gonzalo Pineda and Preki being part of that coaching staff. There's a lot of tactical thought that goes into it. But this team largely is just about putting guys that are successful in very specific situations and getting them in those situations as frequently as possible.
Last season, there was 4 games played between the Quakes and the Sounders. This time, it's basically for first place in the Supporters Shield, first place in the West, which might be the first time. I'm not quite sure for these two teams to meet under that type of situation, and it is very early in the season at this point. When you think about what you've seen so far from the Quakes this season, they've been pressed by teams every single game. It seems like teams feel like the best way to be able to beat the Earthquakes is with an aggressive press. It honestly hasn't really worked that well, other than Houston, which was the first game of the season, where it did feel like, Houston was able to catch the Quakes, not quite gelling in that central midfield.
Agreed.
But since then, it hasn't really been all that effective. How would you expect Schmetzer will look at those first 4 games and how teams have played the Quakes, coupled with, to your point, the kind of the updated strengths of the Sounders team? How do you think he will match up against the Quakes, given that central midfield and given a threat like Cade Cowell up top?
Well, I first of all, Brian Schmetzer never does anything I expect him to do. I'll be
I think you and I can agree to that. We've talked about that a lot.
But if I'm put in his position, I kind of cede possession, right? Like I think that right now, between Brad Smith, between Rui Diaz, with Josh Intensio's ability to spray those long balls, I kind of cede possession a little bit and try to hit the Earthquakes on the break. I think giving Cade Cowell just a little bit less room to operate on the break helps diminish his impact and forces him to work in tight spaces, which I don't know we've really seen a lot of. He's been successful in some situations that come to mind, but at the same time, maybe make this kind of a as they say in the NBA, make it a half-court game, and make them work and develop some passing patterns that give them looks rather than trying to exploit specific areas on the break that Cowell can run into, specific channels that he can run into.
Thanks again for joining me today, Harrison. How can people get to reach you? How can they follow you and see your work?
First of all, they shouldn't. But if they did, at Harrison_Crow on Twitter, go out to American Soccer Analysis. There are so many guys doing amazing things, like like Jamon, like you have Elliot, and I'm gonna miss everybody. Ian, Matthias doing amazing database work. Go out to ASA, y'all. It's been a labor of love for the past, I don't know how many years, a lot. And I'm a little offended that you said that this might be the first time that the Sounders and Quakes meet under for first place. I think 2012, 2013, it felt like every time they met, it was for first place. Like
that's actually what I was wondering. That's what I actually put the pressure on Quakes PR to go research that. So I'm gonna let them do that and give me the answer.
Sounds good, man.
All right. Thanks again for joining us today, Harrison. So absolutely, the Quakes and the Sounders for first place at PayPal Park coming up on Wednesday night. Of course, the Aftershock will be your post-game show live, and we will be talking to Matias Almeida and hopefully a couple players at the end of what I'm sure will be an exciting Earthquakes win. Harrison, thanks again for joining us. Take care.